This is a country that owes its life to water and lives constantly in fear of it. Floods swept over the land again this summer, dealing yet another blow to a community still reeling from natural disaster and civil war. The war produced political independence, but left the new nation on the edge of ruin, waiting for aid from the far-off countries of the West.
Try your VHF homing on us. Is this possible? Negative VHF.
It also left it potential prey to other powers ready to manipulate the chaos to their own advantage. The people know, or their leaders do, that this aid can't go on forever. One day the handouts will not be there to pick up. They will have to pick themselves up by their bootstraps instead and learn to deal with both the disasters of nature and those that threaten to swallow up their independence before they can taste it themselves. This week, Echo turns to Dhaka and the new nation of Bangladesh. The heady atmosphere of independence still swirls around Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father figure, the leader on whom national unity hangs. But among the many voices around him, there are some urging him farther left than his own brand of democratic socialism would dictate. Only the Sheikh's charisma holds together the many forces released by the war. And there is fertile ground for exploiting internal discontent. The euphoria of independence did not charm away the legacies of war. Wrecked Pakistani ships and Indian mines clogged Chittagong harbor, hindering delivery of needed raw materials. After 7 months of a much publicized Soviet aid project to clear the wreckage, the port works at only 2/3 capacity, a bottleneck to progress. Dhaka Airport remained operational, in constant use by the United Nations and charitable organizations rushing in emergency aid. But Bangladesh had no planes for a commercial airline. It had previously been served by West Pakistan. The one aircraft it possessed at independence crashed after only 6 days. It was apparently too much of a blow to national pride. The morning after the crash, reporters found the identification marks covered over. Meanwhile, relief supplies flowed in. Apart from India, the main suppliers were the United States and Britain, a fact which went largely unpublicized by the Dhaka press. Bridges are vital communications in Bangladesh, a land of great rivers. Hundreds were wrecked in the fighting. The Indian Army put up some temporary structures, but it may be years before the great railway bridges are fully rebuilt and the villages beyond reintegrated into the life of the country. There have been no reports of actual starvation, but the threat is never far away and will grow as the population steadily rises. Rice supplies, which suffered during the war, are getting back to normal, but prices are high. It's reported that rice is smuggled over the border into India and sold back to Bangladesh at a big profit. Jute production is also reviving. It must, for it is the country's major product, along with tea and people. The birth rate is clearly beyond the capacity of the economy to provide jobs. Factories are reopening, production is getting going again, but the process is painfully slow. Thousands gather at the gate, but there's work only for the few at the head of the queue. Most of the industry in Dhaka was owned by a few wealthy families from West Pakistan. When independence came, it was nationalized. The people believed the factories were now theirs. There would be a good living for everyone, and the profits would no longer be drained away to Pakistan. But a note of desperation is creeping into the cheering. Enthusiasm and nationalism, they are finding, are not enough. Power cuts, shortage of spare parts, inexperienced management, lack of a steady supply of raw materials are all keeping the factories at half throttle and the queues at the labor exchanges long. Occasionally, for the lucky few, a job. For most, the instruction to fill in a form and come back later. More and more people flock into the towns where the real destitution is. Poverty is harder to bear here than in the villages, and perhaps it is also the end of a dream that was born in the first flush of nationalism. Neither man nor nation can live in pride as a beggar. Huge stocks of weapons were brought out by the Mukti Bahini, the freedom fighters of this civil war, when the government persuaded them to surrender their arms. Even so, there are doubts that all were handed in. One of the most famous guerrilla leaders, Abdul Qadir Siddiqui, hands over his weapon to Sheikh Mujib as a symbolic gesture. The war is over. The guerrillas have officially disbanded. But will Siddiqui be heard of again? A spellbinder with more than a hint of Fidel Castro. He and his followers submitted to Mujib, but there are signs that the young are beginning to listen to other voices. The universities are fertile ground for Moscow-oriented agitators, mainly ex-Mukti Bahinis, who appear at and tend to dominate student meetings. They have one idea that they're trying to implant in the minds of these young people. Their future lies in alliance with Russia. If they succeed, this new nation could become just another pawn in the power struggle between Moscow and Peking. In the background is Soviet Premier Brezhnev's plan for an Asian security organization linking India and Bangladesh to Moscow, an arrangement which would outflank Moscow's bitterest opponent, China. Siddiqui himself, out of uniform, still obviously commands a following, not only in the country, but among the revolutionary youth of Dhaka. He puts his political standpoint as somewhere between Marx, Lenin, and Mao. A new note may one day ring through the cheerful nationalist chant of Jai Bangla. For the time being, Bangladesh is at peace, but drifting as the wave of nationalist exuberance recedes. No one knows better than a Bengali how a small cloud can foreshadow a great storm. The mutterings are already there. The question is, Can Sheikh Mujib and his frail craft ride it out, or will they be swamped in another great flood?